polished, I guess.
I noticed today when driving through there, part of it has already got grass and weeds growing over it. So I assume our city employees are going to maintain it.
We will. It's substantially complete now, so we've basically taken ownership of that sidewalk now. So I'll need to find out, and maybe we just need to remind our guys, they haven't had a sidewalk there to maintain before. So that may lie 100% on my shoulders to make sure that we have a plan to keep that up and keep that clean, the grass growing and such.
We don't want to bring it up, but we know how particular I am.
And we,
About
it is our desire to keep it 100%
The cracks
mint.
and the weeds in the sidewalks.
Yes, ma'am. We'll get a plan to keep that corrected. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody have any other questions about our Q2 goals, whether completed or uncompleted? Okay. So let's take a look at our agenda for tonight. I'm not going to read through all of this. It's our kind of standard agenda as we navigate through. I think, Eugene, you did have a question as we go along. After roll call, we got the consideration of consent agenda and some disposable items, inventory from Parks and Rec.
Mr. Moore, Blake, I was concerned about the football helmets, et cetera, that you were getting to dispose of. Is there someone else, another community or something that could possibly use these?
Yes, sir. We're looking into that. We've got 2 or 3 that we're going to reach out to. I just needed to make sure we have permission. Some of them we do not want to give to other communities. I believe some of them I played in back in the day, which is not safe.
Some of them need to go in the garbage.
Yes, sir. So I wouldn't hand those out. But there are some that we would, and we just restocked our football helmets last year, so we're good for the next couple of years on football helmets.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So you want us to definitely still, if it, approve of disposal, should you make a decision to,
Yes, ma'am.
got you, to donate, all right. We have a permit street closure request from Girls Night Out, Main Street Enterprise, and Girls Night Out. That's for, when is that event date? September 27th, Saturday, September 27th, 2025. Is anybody here that would like to, present or explain to us about this closure request?
Hi, can you hear me? Main Street Enterprise is seeking approval for this event to take place on September 27th from 3 to 8 p.m. with street closures of West and a portion of East College Street beginning at 1 p.m. through 9 p.m. Please note that it was decided this afternoon to forego the rain date, so that will no longer need to be considered. This is a standard event that takes place annually. It has been vetted in our department head meeting, and I have checked with the police chief to confirm this police patrolling, which is standard for this event. It's a charity shopping event to benefit breast cancer support services in our local community.
Thank you. So we can just scratch out, right? No rain date.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any questions?
And Chief, you said you talked with Chief?
I did.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, then we'll have our privilege of the floor, and then we'll have staff reports. Then we're moving to our old business. We have a public hearing, 2 public hearings for ABC license requests, and that's it for our old business. Then we have a new business. We have several resolutions, or a couple of resolutions to consider as far as the election. Mr. Tell us anything particular about those requests?
So Beverly and I spoke about this earlier this week. The first resolution that you have there would have the city clerk be designated to perform the duties of the mayor. That is something that's outlined if the mayor is for a municipality seeking re-election, then someone else would need to perform those duties. And so through the league handbook, that's typically recommended, and what has been done in the past for the city of Enterprise is to designate the city clerk. to perform those duties.
Okay.
And then again, city clerk to be the absentee election manager, which is pretty standard.
Okay. Then we have a request to authorize our HR director to execute an agreement, and this is involving our employee background verification services, and I think Ms. Love presented to us the last time about that. Ms. Love, is she here? Well, is there anything additional that you would like? Okay. And then we have a request to authorize Ms. Love to execute an agreement with Tyler Technologies for the purchase of the time clocks and timekeeping software. Is there any additional information that you want? She's presented that to us in a previous work session as well. Then we have a request to amend the use of awarded grant funds. And this is coming from Ms. McDaniel with Main Street, and she explained that to us in our last work session, I do believe. Her request to be able to use the grant money of $25,000 with the planners. And that's still correct, Ms. McDaniel? Okay. And then we will recess from our regular session and convene into our E91 board meeting. We will review our minutes for that and approve accounts payable A, and then adjourn that meeting and reconvene in our regular session and end with our mayor's report and the council member comments. Does anybody have any questions, additions, deletions for the agenda? Okay. So now we will have our Tier 1 retirement discussion by Mr. Tullis, Ms. Swartz, and Ms. Love.
Mayor, council members, I'll be brief and let Leanne and Allison kind of lead the charge here. But as we discussed earlier, why now? Well, this is something that's been on the council's agenda for discussion. I think Councilmember Johnson asked that it be brought forward. Unless an action is taken within the next 6 weeks, should the council choose to do something, it'll be moot until FY '27. So we would have a lot of work on our end to do to prepare for RSA, for the benefits to be administered, get some calculations back so that we can change our formulas and percentages that both the city and the employee would contribute. And so in order to do that, we would need to turn that in sometime in August to RSA. So that's why. If you look in your work session packets, our CFO and HR director have prepared several documents. The first is a presentation that starts off with definitions there. They're going to walk through kind of a discussion of what Tier 1 and Tier 2 benefits are and the differences with that, and then get into more specifics about where our city sits within that across the state, and ultimately show you, if you were to choose that, what the different options look like, how much they would cost, and then if you so desire, be prepared to make a recommendation on if the city were to go to Tier 1 benefits, which of those options we would choose.
Okay, so on the first page of the presentation, you have in here the definitions. So everyone knows what the tier 1 and Tier 2 is. In this presentation, Tier 3 is what is the Tier 2 with Tier 1 benefits is what is being called Tier 3 in here. And then, of course, anywhere you see RSA referenced, it's the Retirement Systems of Alabama. And then ERS is Employee Retirement System. And then if you see ERS with FLC, then that is your firefighters, law enforcement, and correctional officers. So just to kind of review the differences in the benefits for Tier 1 and Tier 2. So Tier 1, any employee hired prior to January 1st, 2013. If you were hired on or after January 1st, 2013, then you're a Tier 2 employee. So the contribution rates for the employee is a little bit different based on Tier 1 and Tier 2. So Tier 2, 6.0 for your regular employees and 7% for your firefighters, law enforcement, and correctional officers. The age of retirement eligibility is quite a bit different between the two tiers. So for Tier 1, you're eligible for retirement after 25 years of service at any age. And then at age 60, if you have at least 10 years of service. For Tier 2, there's no retirement based on the years of service of 25 or 30 years like there is in Tier 1. And the retirement eligibility is at least 10 years of service and age 62 or age 56 for your law enforcement, firefighters, and correctional officers. And then the factor that determines your amount of retirement benefit is different between the two tiers. So 2.0125% for your Tier 1 and then 1.65 for your Tier 2 employees. And then, so in Tier 1, to determine the salary that is used to get your benefit, so in Tier 1, it's the average of the highest 3 years of your last 10 years of employment. For Tier 2, it's the average of the highest 5 of the last 10. There's no benefit cap in Tier 1. There is in Tier 2. Sick leave conversion. So in Tier 1, you can convert your sick leave to time in service, whereas you cannot do that in Tier 2. And then your firefighters, law enforcement, and correctional officers do get a 5-for-1 bonus years of service. So the benefits comparison, so the next 2 pages, there's a benefits comparison for your law enforcement, fire department, and correctional officers, and then for regular employees. Now, this benefit comparison is basically if someone started working with the city at age 18 and worked until retirement. So you see the difference in the benefits at the time of retirement if they were a Tier 1 employee or a Tier 2 employee. Is there any questions about the differences in kind of the benefit amounts for those two?
When you say the benefit amounts, you're talking about that dollar difference?
The dollar difference here.
I'm saying when you say benefit amounts, what are you talking about specifically? Are you talking about this 4,200 difference versus the?
Okay, so if you look at that, you can see under Tier 1, somebody who started working here at age 18 could retire potentially at the age of 49 or 48. At that point, they would have had 36 years in the system, and their monthly benefit amount, and again, this is kind of an average. We've done some averaging on the salaries. Of course, everybody's salary would be depending on your position, right? This one is, the first page is the FLC, so that's for law enforcement, firefighters, that category. If we looked at them and we took an average and we said they started here working at 18, they worked until the age of retirement of 48, then they would have had 36 years in the system. That $4,200 would be their monthly
Benefit amount.
retirement benefit amount that they would be receiving at age 48. If you look at the last column, the Tier 2 column, that same person hired after January 1, 2013, same position, same job. They start working for the city at age 18. Now with the Tier 2 benefits, they have to work until age 56 to retire. That would be the earliest date that they would be eligible to stop working. At that point, they would have 38 years in the system. Their eligible monthly benefit would be only $3,600 a month, and they would be eligible to receive those benefits because that's a law enforcement one. They would be able to draw at age 56. So they could go ahead and start drawing at that time. So the column in the middle is the difference between the two. So it's showing you that that person in Tier 2 who had to continue working longer for their retirement, to receive retirement benefits, in that amount of time, that was an 8-year time difference. The amount of money that was earned during that 8 years is the amount there that's shown at the bottom.
That is what that Tier 1 employee has earned in benefits since they retired at age 48.
Correct. So that's specifically for the FLC, so that's specifically for law enforcement and firefighters. If you turn to the next page, that's the same comparison for the rest of the regular employees. And it's set up the exact same way. We took, this is very, again, it's an averaging of the salaries. It's starting out at 18, it's working for a full 30 years. And again, there you can see the differences. A regular employee, earliest retirement there under Tier 1, they can retire at 48. A Tier 2, they would have to wait and retire at 62. And then again, it goes down and shows you what the monthly benefit would be and what the difference is between the two systems, or between the two tiers. Excuse me. Okay. Go ahead.
Right. So with this, we can't adopt it just for police and fire or just for regular employees. We have to adopt it for the city as a whole.
Right.
So the agencies that are participating and that have adopted to have Tier 2 with Tier 1 benefits. So in the state of Alabama, there's 890 agencies in that employee retirement system, and 633 of those agencies have adopted this. So 71% have elected to have their Tier 1 employees receive the Tier 1 benefits. And then if you want to look at just municipalities, so there's 313 municipalities in the employees retirement system. And out of that, 23%, so 73 municipalities have not adopted for their employees to have, Tier 2 employees to have Tier 1 benefits. So 77% have adopted, and of the municipalities, and 23% have not. So as far as the agencies that surround us, so Dothan has adopted it. Troy and Ozark have adopted it. Coffee County has not, but Coffee County Water Authority has.
Just as a reminder, I didn't mention this when we started out, just to remind you, we got here, I think 4 years ago or so, the state had some legislation that set a timeline for cities and counties, any agency to come back on. So in 2013 or 14, the state moved away from Tier 1 retirement because the system itself was not sustainable for the state. So they moved away from that and created a Tier 2 system. So that was the delineation point. Anybody hired after 2013 had to be on Tier 2 benefits. They weren't eligible to be on Tier 1. Then some 10, 11 years later, actually six years later, they opened it up and gave municipalities about a year and a half to figure out if they wanted to be on it or not. So I think that deadline when I was hired was about 2 to 3 weeks. We were on the cusp of, do we do this or not? So ultimately, this council decided not to move forward with it and to stay on Tier 2 benefits, but to look at other benefits and start to address them like pay. So, and that was it. No more chances to come back into the system. So about 2 years later, the state passed legislation that allowed municipalities at any time to come back onto the Tier 1 system. So you had a lot more communities over the last 2 years that have adopted this and gone back as a benefit. So that's why we're back here talking about it, some 4 years later. You didn't have the option to do it, then you did, then you didn't, now you do again. So.
So one question is, why does this matter for our employees? Not only does it matter for our current workforce, but also, future workforce. So it's with firefighters, police officers, other public workers, we are competing with other municipalities for employees. And then you saw the surrounding municipalities that have adopted this. And then you can kind of see, I've done some research, where does Enterprise rank now on some of the benefits. So you can kind of see that there. I looked at Dothan, Troy, Ozark, and Enterprise. The next sheet is, so these are the municipalities that do not participate, that have not adopted this, and you can see those broke down by population. I'm sorry that is small, but I wanted to get that on here. Is there any questions on that?
You're saying this is showing those that do not, I want to make sure I understand,
Right.
not participate.
Correct. Those have not adopted it. They still have, they have not elected for their Tier 2 employees to receive Tier 1 benefits.
But you can see when you look at the population size of those entities or those agencies, where the city ranks amongst those. The next closest person or next closest entities have half of our size. Everyone else our size, the other agencies, other municipalities our size, anywhere near us have already converted.
Right. So there's definitely a list of people lower than our size population that have adopted it, as well as right
Yes.
around. Yep.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely, absolutely.
And I think we're considered mid-size. I looked at
Mid-size.
another study. I think we're the only mid-sized city that doesn't
Correct.
have it.
Right.
Correct. There is another one that's sort of similar, but they have a special, their retirement is not through RSA. It's a specially funded.
Their police department and fire department, they have a private retirement for them.
Is that
in
Anniston?
that city.
Okay, so, and Allison went over a lot of the benefit, like the differences between the Tier 1 and the Tier 2, and how those affect the employees in the long term. I know also what the concern is that can we fund this? And what is it going to cost the city, right? Because if we make a change, there's going to be nothing's free. There's always a cost to this. If you turn to the next page, it should say current employee census data on the top of it. So that set of employees, if you look right there, we've got currently 116 employees that are in Tier 1 and 200 approximately in Tier 2 for a total of 316 city employees. Also want to keep in mind that that number also includes the water department. They would have to take a separate action on that, but for purposes of trying to understand in totality what the effect of this would be, we included them in all of our numbers. That's their annual compensation right now based off of last year's numbers. We put on there our current rates, what the city is currently contributing for Tier 1 and what they're contributing for Tier 2. We've already received, and it should be in your packet, there should be a sheet called Employees Retirement Systems of Alabama Actuarial Valuation as of September 30th, 2023. That comes from RSA. That is just like it says, it's the actuarial valuation, and it lays out our rates that we're going to be paying for next year. So if you look at the slide that we've provided, already our rates are going to go from the 10.7% for Tier 1. The city's rate is going to go up to 11.49% next year. For Tier 2, it's going to go from 7.63% up to 8.37%. If you go to the next line, the options that are available, of course, are that council takes no action, and we continue on with the Tier 1, Tier 2 split like we have been. The options, though, that are available is that there's 2 acts that you can choose to adopt. If you choose to adopt both of those acts, then for next year, the rate for Tier 1 would go to 9.9%, and the rate for Tier 2 would go to 10.63%. If you look at that between what we're already obligated for next year, as far as percentages are, if council were to choose to look at moving forward with both acts, the difference in next year would be less than a percentage difference. It would be a 0.67% difference increase over what we're already obligated to contribute for next year. The bottom line is if we adopt Act 2022-348 and we choose not to adopt the other act, which would keep the Tier 1 member contribution rates what they are. If we did that, then it would increase more significantly the contribution rate for the city. If we enact both, which is the 9.9 and the 10.63, that also requires that the employees' portion increases. So what the employees are contributing currently would increase, and it's their contributions towards their retirement. But it lessens then the percentage that would be provided by the city, if that makes sense. There'll be an increase either way, but it would be less if we adopt both acts. So the next page is an estimate. That's just based off of the current, like what the salaries are right now. The next page is that same information. However, if you recall last year, council voted to do a 5% across the board increase on pay, but then we put a moratorium on the annual merit increases. So that's due to expire at the end of this fiscal year. So depending on what council decides to do for next year, if those are reinstated, this is a scenario with the 2.5% pay increase, merit increases factored in to the payroll numbers. So that kind of gives you an actual dollar instead of just a percentage amount of how it would change. That'll give you a dollar. You can see the dollar figure. So not a very significant increase. The bottom line on that is that's our annual contribution. That's not the only cost to the city, right? Because what happens is when we increase those benefits, what also increases with it is our liability. Because at some point, all of these employees are going to retire and then be entitled to their retirement checks every month. So at some point in the future, we have a long-term outstanding liability that we have accrued to ensure that we can pay for those retirement benefits, or RSA can pay for those retirement benefits. Okay, when we change from Tier 2 to Tier 2 with Tier 1 benefits, the benefits increase, which means our liability is going to increase. So currently, and again, if you will look at that, the Employees Retirement Systems of Alabama, the actuarial valuation sheet, if you look at that, and there's the second page to it, it shows on there the schedule of funding progress. So as of 2023, because again, it takes a huge team of actuaries, a lot of time to run these numbers and put them together. So it's always on it's on data that's usually a couple of years behind. As of the end of 2023, our funded ratio, which means the estimate of the long-term liability that we would have had is just over $47.5 million. We have not exactly contributed that amount of money into the fund as of the end of 2023. Our funded ratio at the end of the year was 71.6%. It has slowly, if you look at that chart right there, you can see that from 2019, our funded ratio has dropped from 77.8 down to 71.6%. So it has slowly, over the years with growth, there's a lot of factors that go into those calculations. The city's grown both in the number of employees that work here and in salaries. We've had a number of we had a new pay plan implemented. We've had, the COLA last year. So those things are naturally going to cause that liability to grow. And in this situation, our funded ratio has dropped a little bit. If council were to take action and choose to go with Tier 3, it is going to increase our liability. Absolutely. The estimates back 4 years ago when this was presented before, the estimate that was given at that time was that the unfunded liability was going to increase by $635,000 4 years ago. I would make an assumption that it's going to increase by probably $1 million. It could be easily $1 million to have that unfunded liability increase. So what that does then is our funded ratio drops a little bit. It's preferable that we keep that range within the 70 to 80% range so that we've got coverage for retirees, and it's just best to keep your ratio at that level. There's a few options that can be done in order to be able to fund that. We can make a lump sum payment to bump the liability or to bump our funding up a little bit. We can also choose to increase our contributions for the year. So, for example, where I had shown you that next year's required contribution is 11.49%, we could choose to contribute 12% if we wanted to, so that we can we're helping to fund that liability and help bring that funded portion up. Concerns about the liability?
So when this came up 4 years ago, we were basically given just a couple weeks to figure this out. we had no idea what, I personally had no idea what Tier 1, Tier 2 meant. We weren't given an opportunity to even have a nearly coherent conversation as what we're having right now. And the concern is that we could not afford to do it. And everything that we heard is that we could not afford to do it. And with such a short term, I hate making quick decisions like that without having proper information. So I voted against it, not because I wanted our employees to not have a good retirement system, but because I could not be convinced in a short amount of time that the city could afford to take this on. So what is your opinion now that you've had plenty of time to look at our city finances and get your hands wrapped around them, and you've been through a number of budget processes with us? What is your feeling now based on the facts of our finances this city?
Okay, my assessment is we're in a much different, much better position now than we were 4 or 5 years ago in many respects. We've had a very strong financial showing the last 5 years, and it hasn't done anything except continue to grow. The city has done very well in that. We are in a position right now, and let me say this, is that if you don't do this now, you can choose to do this later. If you postpone it, or if you did it 5 years from now, that liability is not going to do anything except grow. And then when you do the changeover, the upfront cost of that is going to be more expensive. I can say that in this moment, can we afford to make a contribution that would keep us within our designated funded ratio? Yes, I think we can do that. I know that we can do that. I know that the difference in the contribution rate is not enough to, on the annual basis, is manageable. That's absolutely affordable within the growth that the city has had. The 0.67% is not prohibitive. Yes, of course, I don't like to say that liability is going to grow, but I am confident that we have the funding currently available to be able to fund that. As always, it's a choice, as to what the council's priorities are, and as to where you would like to place that. But at this time, yes, we are able to handle this.
Well, I've always been a proponent of doing the best we possibly can for our city employees. I voted for every pay increase. I promoted pay increases. Like I said, the only reason I voted against this, not because I didn't want to give good benefits. I have been a proponent of giving good benefits. We just were not able to get information quick enough, coherent enough, with a feeling that we could afford it the last time around. So I'm hearing a completely different scenario. How does this affect our ability to recruit employees versus doing it versus not doing
Well,
it?
and let me say this to you too, because I came on board right when you guys were initially doing that. I wasn't here to do any of the research. I wasn't here to run the numbers and do that. I would have been hesitant at that time to advise you or to say that we had the funding to do that with the information that was available at that time. I agree with you on that. I'm much more confident, much more solid in our position. I've had much more adequate time to be able to look into this, run through the numbers. I can't, unfortunately, because I'm not an actuary, and I promise you they have a huge team of people who come up with these numbers every year. So I would love to be able to give you an exact dollar amount and say it's going to cost us exactly this. Unfortunately, I cannot do that. Am I confident that the increase, that we will be able to handle that? Yes, I am.
Okay.
And I think that will not be an issue.
Well, that was my number one concern with it the last time around, is that we could or could not afford it, and I didn't want to put the city in a terrible financial situation.
And there's ways of doing it too, is that it's not necessarily that they would call and we would have to hand over a check for $6 million. Is that if there's a liability, there's a way to pay a portion of it, increase then our contributions for the year to help close that gap. So I'm not necessarily advocating that we would necessarily just write them a check immediately to fund the entire difference. But there's ways for us to do that and sort of scale it in so that it's not as painful, I guess, all at one time.
I have one last question. You talked about two different acts, and one of them increasing the employee benefit. I see on this paperwork that if we did not take both acts, the liability of the city is much greater.
Yes, sir.
Spread over all the employees, does that look to you like something that is not going to be a hardship or to the employees if we were to pass both acts on that?
If I were to my recommendation would be to pass both acts. Yes, it does require additional contribution on behalf of the Tier 1 employees. So that will increase. Do you want to?
So that question was asked of a lot of our Tier 1 employees, not a full sample size, but particularly by some of the departments in public safety, police and fire. And most of the employees that we got back from Chief Davis and more indicated that they'd be willing to do that. Ultimately, they're contributing into their retirement, right? So it's not that we're just taking money from them, it's going somewhere else. If it meant that benefit could be realized for, other employees in their department. I'm probably slightly more cautious than Leanne about this, but I do think that her recommendation is still valid. We're not going from a pension or no pension to a pension. It's a pension, and even at Tier 2, you can see what that unfunded liability does if it's not managed properly. This will certainly, compound that. But as you look in those three buckets of salary, right, and where we rank, our medical benefits and where we rank, we have great medical, and then this, obviously we're one of just a handful of agencies that don't have this. Which levers can you pull? Because ultimately, whether we add an increased cost in this benefit, or we increase pay, or, we can't do much better in the medical area because it's free. But in those areas, those are the levers you can pull. So if we were to increase salaries, we're still going to spend more money on that. Every time we increase salaries, you're going to change your unfunded. To her point about actuaries, you see all of the different, on that page, you see all the assumptions that they make, right? And so you can see, this assumes that the investment rate of return that RSA has on this money is 7.45%. If they don't get that, if they get 5%, that changes our unfunded liability. Ultimately, it's the city of Enterprise that's going to backstop this as a benefit for our employees. And that's what happened, 10, 15 years ago when 2008 happened and the markets fell, which is why the state ran away from it. But it also includes inflation at 2.5%. I don't know anybody that would look me in the eyes and tell me that inflation has been 2.5% or lower the last few years. So those assumptions are just that, and that's what they base that on. But I do believe that we're in a strong position to support this financially if the council chose to move forward with it. Now, it would mean that those other levers, we need to evaluate those too. What does that mean? But you would have ways to offset that in the future. Not suggesting you would want to do that, but as an example, should employees, or we get in a financial situation where this becomes a hardship, should employees pay $50 a month for their medical insurance? That would be an option. Should we freeze merit increases? Those would be options that you would have in the future if these became untenable to do. But regardless, whether you're talking about any one of those buckets, it's going to cost more money to pay employees more. But if this benefit proves that it's more valuable for recruitment and retention efforts, I think this would be the option that would do the least harm in the short and midterm to the city.
I certainly want to give everybody an opportunity to make expressions or questions if they have. We got a couple more minutes. I do agree with Mr. Paget that we did not have a lot of the information that was presented to us tonight, so I appreciate the time that was taken to give us more information. I am a proponent of the Tier 1. I think it's easy to assume that employees are only interested or more concerned, rather, than their right now pay, and less concerned about retirement. I don't believe that to be so. I mean, personally, I think we lose some people to other cities that do have Tier 1, because at the end of the day, Sonia does not want to work into her it's close to 65 or 70. So that would be something that I personally would look at, how long am I going to have to do this? What am I investing in my future beyond work? And so I think it's important that we consider just the whole scope. This is just Soniaism of providing good benefits for our employees. Yes, we want you to do a good job for us while you're working, but we want to look out for you beyond the paycheck that we, beyond the working years. So anybody else? We got some time. We got about 6 minutes.
I agree with you, Sonia. You know, I was a yes vote too, and I'm a big proponent of this action. I've had several folks within all departments that have come up to me and said, are we ever going to get Tier 1? And when you sit down and look at the data of folks around us, I know one incident where a young man, I've known since high school or younger, is firefighting up at Troy because of it. And he asked me one time, are y'all going to ever do it? I said, well, hang in there.
Right. We don't want to be the training
And that's what's
facility for other people to go and get the
Right.
folks that we set up to be good, and then they go somewhere else to.
Police, fire, all the departments.
Right.
I mean, I was just looking at the jobs that were offered now, and they've been on there for quite a while.
And I don't know exactly what our average age, I'll just use the fire department, for instance. So if you got people retiring and you're looking at people that's getting ready to have to be replaced, I would assume that would be something that,
I was going to say, would it be appropriate, Chief Davis?
Chief, can you kind of give us a little
Do you mind, Jonathan?
2-minute chief insight on this matter? Because I know that you're a proponent of as far as your staff and with retention and whatnot.
I am.
Thank you.
I appreciate the time. One of the biggest things that I've been told for the last quite a few years is that most people did not feel that they got a massive amount of information.
True.
On the briefing the last time. That's one of the reasons that I'm so excited that you guys are hearing the facts, so that you can make a decision as to what you do. If I go back to Councilman Paget's point, was asking about recruitment. The Enterprise Fire Department used to have between 6, 12, even 20 applications as certified firefighters. You guys may remember me mentioning this about 4 years ago when I was telling you that I was increasing new hire pay inside the budget line item because we were going to be hiring more non-certifieds. As it sits, we're lucky if we have 1 or 2 certifieds inside of our queue at this point. The Tier 1s are older, the ones that are at the other departments now, they've been there for a while. They're going to lose a great deal of money if they come over here. So those transfers that we would expect, those are the Tier 2s. And one of the things that we've seen mentioned is that they're concerned that if they come over here, they lose it. Because if you're a Tier 2 with Tier 1 benefit, say at Dothan, if you come to Enterprise, that's gone. You revert back to a straight Tier 2. You don't get to keep that, unless, of course, we adopt those. Another thing that I wanted to mention real quick, and I know we're running out of time, we did a sampling inside of the fire department, as a concern, because obviously if you go from, say, 6% to 8.5%, so I'm a tier 1, obviously, I would go from paying in 6% to 8.5%, as an example. So I communicated with every single tier 1 employee. Without the tier 2s there, I apologized later, because I didn't want them to have pressure. I made a spreadsheet that showed them exactly what they currently pay, what they would pay and what the increase would be between them. 100%, 52% of my department, 100% of the tier 1s said it was worth it because it was the right thing to do. If you have the opportunity to do this, obviously I'm a huge proponent, and I appreciate the fact that you guys are looking at this again. I'm fairly versed in this. If I can be of assistance to you, if I can go over numbers with you, I know I'm probably not we have experts. But if I can be of any service to you at all, explaining any of this information, please let me know. I'll come to you. We'll go over it. You'll either feel good about it or bad about it.
Thank you.
Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
So-
you, Chief.
Madam President,
Sounds like to me that this is the best thing that we can do for retainage and for hiring. Is that correct?
Councilman, I wholeheartedly believe we are going to be facing a crisis if we don't do this. In the future, I see a time where we are training and hiring for them to go to another department or another city. And at that time, when I've got 100% of my officers could retire in the next 7 years, how are we going to maintain experience, which is one of the most important, I'm pretty sure Chief would agree with me here, their ability, their training is important. The experience that emergency responders specifically accumulate over their career is priceless. I don't want to see that experience go down in this department. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mayor, you were trying to,
yes, I want you to know that I do support Tier 1 benefits for our city employees. City employees are the backbone of our community. This is a well-deserved way to honor their hard work and their investment in the future, and to show our gratitude to their commitment. Offering Tier 1 benefits will also strengthen our ability to recruit and retain quality workers. If it's financially feasible, and I believe it is, we have a responsibility to take care of the people who take care of our city. And when we look at Dothan, Troy, and Ozark, and of course, understand the Crawford County Water Authority, is that this is one way that we can show that we care for the people that keeps our city afloat.
thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tullis, in about 30 seconds, please advise, or Ms. Swartz, what's our next, if it's our choice to have this on an agenda coming, I think we said we were crunched for a timeline.
Yeah.
To look at July. Is it another work session necessary, or?
Not necessarily. I know you're
Okay.
missing a council member here, but if you would like to take it up for a vote, we just need to know so we can kind of which option. So if you heard correctly, our recommendation was to enact both acts, adopt both acts. And if that's the direction that the council would like to take up to consider, we could just go to work on that over the next couple of weeks and maybe introduce it at the next council meeting or one in July, lay it over for 2 weeks, and then you
I'm
could
in
vote up or
favor of
down.
you getting ready for a vote.
That would be my preference.
Yes, sir.
I would support it if both acts were adopted.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you again for such a detailed presentation. Appreciate that. We will adjourn to our regular meeting. So we have all of our council members present except our president, Mr. Townsend, who could not be here tonight. So I do call our Enterprise City Council meeting to order. And if you would, please stand with me for our opening prayer and our Pledge of Allegiance. I think we have Reverend John McCrummon of Open Door Baptist Church that's going to give us our prayer tonight.
Council, I don't know how this happened, but thank you for the opportunity. Let us pray. Father God, we thank you for this great city you've given us. I thank you for these leaders. I thank you for our mayor. Father, I thank you for the first responders. I thank you for the sheriff's department, the rescue squad. Father, I just pray that your Holy Spirit would lead and guide us as a city. I pray, God, for these who lead us would keep in mind of the spiritual aspect of whose we are, and Father, who we honor and where we need to go. Father, I pray for the people who come to our city. God, I just pray that you'd help us to be able to love them and assimilate them and work with them in all they say and do. Father, we thank you for the privilege of being a free country and a free city. God, again, I just pray that you lead and guide this council and all who's involved in decision-making. Give them wisdom. Father, you said if we like it, to ask for it, you'd give it to us without holding back. And Father, we certainly acknowledge you that you're the great I am, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings. And Father, we thank you in Jesus' name for what you've done and what you've shown us. Father, have your way in this meeting tonight. May it be done peaceful. Lord, may be great things accomplished. Father, we'll bless you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Join me with the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now I will call for a motion for our approval of our agenda.
I move to approve the agenda of the meeting as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We will now consider our consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the council for review, are considered to be routine, and will be enacted by one motion of the city council with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda by request of a member of the city council. I will now call for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. We will now consider permit street closure request. This is from Main Street Enterprise and Friends of Main Street Girls Night Out. I will now call for a motion to approve the following permit request as submitted, which is the Girls Night Out for Breast Cancer Awareness. The event date and time is Saturday, September 27th from 3 o'clock to 8 p.m. There is no rain date. The street closure time is 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., and the closure areas are West College Street from Main Street to Railroad Street, from the portion on East College Street from Main Street to the first alleyway. Is there a motion to approve the permit request?
Move to approve the permit as requested.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. It is now time where we have our privilege of the floor. This is part of our meeting where anyone in attendance tonight who wishes to address the council may do so for 3 minutes. If there is a public hearing on the agenda for the topic you are concerned with, we ask that you please wait until that public hearing opens to address the council. If they choose, the staff, mayor, and council will respond to your comments during the appointed times later in the meeting. Repetitive, disruptive, and disparaging comments will not be tolerated. If you are found out of order, your privileges can and will be revoked. Does anyone wish to address the council at this time? Okay, there's no one taking advantage of privilege of the floor. We will now go into staff reports. Do we have any staff reports? Chief Moore?
I know we were running out of time before, so Chief Davis got his turn. I'd like my turn now.
I was hoping that you would take
So,
advantage.
especially since I have my fine officers in the back. I just want to say, as everybody else, I was never against changing from doing this amendment or anything else. I think the retirement is always better, especially in our field of work where you get extremely stressed really quick. I've never been against the swap with money or anything else. I was always concerned was this the best decision as we had it 4 years ago? We were in a completely different time, especially in law enforcement, that there was a lot of factors that we could not get people hired. Just a different world, if you will. Our recruitment has gone up, but again, like Chief Davis said, retention is my main problem right now, is how do I retain the people that are talking about going to other places? So as him and everybody else, and just with information given, that I would also completely change my mind and say I'm 100% in support of this, that I think it's what we need to do for our employees. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Moore. Any other staff reports? Mr. Mott?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chairman. Ask Thomas to come up here as well. To give you a precursor, on next council agenda, we'll have something on the agenda for you, and it has to do with the demolition of some of the nuisance properties that the city will be abating, basically demolition or tearing down of the structures. This was a learning curve. This is the first batch that we did that. We learned our way through that process. One of the things that we had to do was to figure out a way whether to hire a contractor or do it in-house. It was my preference to do them in-house. One of the things I discovered is we had to get asbestos and lead testing done to make sure that we had that as part of the package. So if it was a structure that we were not facing any hazardous materials, we could do that in-house. And if not, we will put those out for packages. So part of that process, we had a consultant come in and do asbestos and lead testing through the structures and to see which ones we had and did not have. And we'll be moving forward with some of the demolition projects possibly as early as next week. But what you'll have on the council agenda next council meeting will be a request from staff to give us a 120-day extension on the first batch of houses that are there, just to give us adequate time to get those things down, what we can get down, and the ones we can't, we'll have a bid for that and move forward with it. But we'll be requesting an additional 120 days. And this is just for batch number 1. I didn't know if you had any questions for us. It was just really to kind of give you a heads up that we'll be requesting that next council meeting, give you an update of where we are.
Thank you.
I have a question, but it has nothing to do with the demolition.
Yes, sir.
What about the repair of Lee Street? You said this summer, hopefully our employees could do it in-house.
Yes, sir. We've got 3 or 4 projects we're wrapping up over the next 2 to 3, 4 weeks. The biggest of one is the PV Park project that you're aware of. The bridge is now complete. The fields are complete. Irrigation's in place. We're finishing up the bathhouse now. We're doing that in-house with in-house staff and finish up the parking lot. We've also got the Wheaton Street Park that we're putting concrete and the other doing concrete work at the airport at that parking lot as well. As soon as we get through with all that, we will be doing the College Lee Street fix. To do it, we want to try one and make sure that what we're up against. The concrete, we haven't cored it exactly, but I believe it's going to be somewhere the 8 inches to a foot thick. So can we actually cut that section out and repair that section? It's going to be, we have to try it. So as soon as the crews get wrapped up on the projects they own, sir, this summer, I will get that done for you.
Thank you.
And get it done, yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Any other staff reports? All righty. Going to our old business, we have a public hearing and consideration of ABC license request from Legacy Travel Center. I will call for a public hearing prior to consideration of a request from Bovar Management LLC doing business as Legacy Travel Center for a retail beer off-premises only license located at 2780 Neil Metcalf Road, Suite B. But now open the hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against the ABC license request? Seeing no one, I will close the hearing and call for consideration of the ABC license request.
I move to approve the ABC license request as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed the same. Motion carries. A public hearing and consideration for ABC license request from Legacy Package Store 2. I will call for a public hearing prior to consideration of a request from Boulevard Management LLC doing business as Legacy Package Store 2 for a retail alcohol package store license located at 2780 Neil Metcalf Road, Suite B. I will now open the hearing. Is there anyone here who wants to speak for or against the consideration of the request? Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to close the hearing and call for consideration of the ABC license request.
I move to approve the ABC license request as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We will now move into our new business. We will review and consider Resolution 060325, which designates a disinterested person in the 2025 election. I will introduce and call for consideration of Resolution 060325, providing for the designation of City Clerk Beverly Sweeney to perform the duties of the mayor related to the municipal election to be held on August 26, 2025, pursuant to Section 114637 Code of Alabama. Is there a motion?
Move to adopt Resolution 060325.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries. We will now review and consider Resolution 060325A to appoint an absentee election manager. We introduce and call for consideration of Resolution 060325A, providing for the appointment of City Clerk Beverly Sweeney as absentee election manager for the 2025 municipal election cycle. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt Resolution 060325A.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We now have a request to authorize HR Director to execute an agreement. This is for Accurate Background LLC. We'll call for a motion to authorize Human Resources Director Allison Love to execute an agreement for employee background verification services with Accurate Background LLC.
Move to authorize the Human Resources Director to execute the agreement as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We will now consider authorizing HR Director to execute an agreement with Tyler Technologies. We'll call for a motion to authorize Human Resources Director Allison Love to amend the current services agreement with Tyler Technologies for the purchase of 19 10-inch time clocks and timekeeping software in the amount of $66,367. Is there a motion?
I move to authorize the Human Resource Director to amend the current services agreement with Tyler Technologies as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We will now consider a request to amend the use of awarded grant funds, and this is coming from Main Street, Alabama grant. We'll introduce and call for consideration of a request from Main Street Director Lily McDaniel to amend the use of awarded Main Street, Alabama grant funds by revising the scope of the crosswalk installation project to become the implementation of Main Street planners in support of downtown beautification efforts. In executing this revised project, grant funds are to be transferred in the amount of $12,500 to the Downtown Enterprise Business Association Friends of Main Street, 501c3, not to exceed the total amount of the grant, which is $25,000. Is there a motion?
Move to amend the use of awarded Main Street, Alabama grant funds as requested.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We will now recess our regular session and convene into our E911 board meeting. All of our board members are here with the exception of Board Member Townsend. The first item on our agenda is the review of our minutes. This is our May 6, 2025 meeting. I call for a motion to approve the May 6, 2025 E911 Board meeting minutes as written.
Move to approve the May 6, 2025 E911 Board meeting minutes as written.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We have no old business. Our new business is accounts payable A for May 2025. I call for a motion to approve accounts payable A for May 2025 in the amount of $4,060.82.
I move to approve the accounts payable A for May 2025.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. That motion carries. Ms. Hill, is that?
That's fine.
That's fine, okay. So we will now adjourn our E911 Board meeting and reconvene in our regular session. And we will conclude with our mayor's report. Mayor Cooper?
Thank you, Madam President. I would also like to thank our city staff for preparing tonight's briefing on Tier 1 benefits and for providing the council with thoughtful and detailed information. I want to reiterate that I strongly believe in taking care of our city employees. If we can afford to offer Tier 1 benefits, and I believe we can, we should do so. I look forward to continuing this discussion and finding a solution that supports our employees, improve retention, and strengthen recruitment. Upcoming events: the municipal election will be August 26th. Filing period for candidates is June 10th through June 24th. More information is available on the city's website. Mark your calendars. I invite everyone to join us downtown on Main Street on Saturday, June 14th for the annual Juneteenth parade. Main Street will be closed at noon, expected to reopen by 1:30. City of Enterprise will be closed on Wednesday, June 19th, in observance of Juneteenth. Enterprise City Hall will be closed to the public on Friday, June the 20th, as the staff transition into their permanent offices. This new space will offer citizens a more efficient and accessible way to conduct business with the city. City Hall will reopen to the public the following Monday, June 23rd. Finally, Watermelon Day at the Enterprise Farmers Market returns Saturday, June 28th. Stay up to date on city events, announcements, and services. Follow the City of Enterprise on Facebook or visit our website at enterpriseal.gov. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Gooseby?
Well, I agree with Mayor what he said about the Tier 1 employee retirement system. Also, I'm glad to see the sidewalk on Delville Avenue completed, even though it does have some little zigs and zags. It's a big improvement. Thank you to all our department heads, and we ask all of our city employees that will be working outside to please stay hydrated. Take care. Thank you all for coming.
Councilman Paget?
I'd like to take just a moment and thank all of the city employees that work so hard, and I especially want to say how grateful and thankful that I am for all of the department heads that have joined us since this council convened 4.5 years ago, or whatever it has been. And I feel like we're in a completely different place right now, and much of that is thanks to our very capable administrative staff and department heads that have worked so hard to turn things around. And thank you for the presentation tonight on Tier 1. I understand it better than I have in 4.5 years.
Thank you.
Councilman Johnson?
Yeah. I'd like to also say thank you to our staff for that great presentation, and thank you, Chief Moore, Chief Davis, for your comments. Appreciate that. It's been a long time. You're right, Greg. There wasn't a lot of information back then. Several projects kicking off. But I think now's the time, the right time for us to do this. And want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Thank you for all our citizens watching on YouTube. And I'd like to mention an event. Some of you might know that they had an honor flight group left out of Delville today, went up to D.C. with, I think, 1 or 2 World War II vets, and then there was probably about 5 or 6 of the Vietnam vets. They will be returning home tomorrow night, and we're trying to get everyone out there in Delville at Civic Center, at their Civic Center there tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. to welcome them back home. I know they got a great send-off with soldiers and folks out at Fort Novosil as they left, but I think this would really mean a lot to them to welcome them back home. Again, tomorrow night, 8:30 in Delville. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Scotty. Certainly ditto everything that's been said about our presentation tonight. Definitely different information, and one thing this council, I think everybody will agree with me on here that Ms. Schwartz, if it's something that cannot be done, she does not mind telling us that no ma'am and no sirs, that it cannot. So she goes through great lengths to make sure that we have good information. And thank you, Ms. Love. I know you haven't been with us long, so I appreciate your time and your effort as well. I know we heard a lot of, we hear comments about in-house work. You heard Mr. Mott make a report today about in-house work. I certainly want to thank all of our staff. All of our staff do an outstanding job. But there is a lot of in-house work that our public works and engineering departments are doing around the city. This is a great contribution to our city that we have staff, capable staff, that are able to save our city money and do an excellent job. If you don't believe me, just take a look or take a ride over by Park Avenue and go by Rita Street Park. You've never seen asphalt on the ground. I know in none of my years, and I played in that park, so it's getting a tremendous facelift in other areas around town, and that's because we have our staff there that are doing that for us, and we know they are certainly stretched, so we certainly say thank you to everyone. And thank you all for coming out tonight. We are adjourned.
Yeah, I'm gonna see this tomorrow.